Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to Underrated Movies. I'm your guy, I'm your man, Mr. Alton Henry. Today I'm going to talk to you about another film that I believe is underrated. In fact, I think it's surprisingly the movie didn't make a lot of money, but I'm sure once it's been rediscovered, and the movie came out recently. I'm talking about Promising Young Woman, um, starring Carey Mulligan, Bo Borman, Alfred Molina. It's a story about a woman named Casey or Cassandra Thompson who is trying to investigate and avenge the death or the tragic past of her friend uh, Nina, who was um, taken advantage of during their time in high school. And this is a black comedy thriller. It's more on the thriller aspect of it as a comedy. So really, a lot of the comedy or the humor takes a back seat. This is kind of geared towards more of kind of a serious comedy thriller. So it's on the subjects of rape, it's on the subjects of trauma, um, scarred friendship, moving on from the past. It deals with a lot of heavy themes and themes to take seriously. Um, this is one where I found it to be one of the best black comedies I've seen, and one of the most unnerving films I've seen in a long while. Because the scenes where Carey Mulligan, she goes out at night, picks up guys who she suspects may or may not have connections to her deceased friend Nina, who she pretty much pretends she's drunk and pretty much schools them out about picking up girls who are drinking under the influence and putting themselves in danger. But she pretty much calls them out on their BS and has a hired what do you call it? She hires some people and pays them to, if she suspects that they're doing wrong, she hires some crooks to beat them up. From what I believe is implied, it doesn't specify, but it looks like she hires certain groups. Once she fishes them out, she hires them to beat them up or to taunt them. You don't really know, but it's implied that that's kind of what happens after she comes into contact with Allison Brie. She's in the film briefly, and she also has connections to Carey Mulligan's past. This is I wouldn't say it's an entertaining film, but it's a entertaining to the sense you're rooting for this girl tr- trying to get a revenge, outsmarting a lot of her ex friends, people who may or may been involved with her friend. It's a very dark film, and it's to the point where it is kind of a dark thriller like movie that really the comedy kind of starts to disappear. But it's kind of the comedy where it's like it's kind of realistic to the point where you kind of have to kind of catch on. It's like, okay, that's kind of smart, but it's nothing to where you could really laugh at because this is a very serious film. Carey Mulligan, my God, she might be one of my favorite actresses right now working. I don't know, like I haven't seen all of her work, but this film's probably my favorite. I mean, I've seen her in Drive, I've seen her in Shane. Um, hands down. I don't think she was not. Was she nominated? I think she was nominated. But I don't think she won. This film was. She was great in every single scene that she's in. She's actually quite terrifying, but she's also feel extremely sad for her character that with the tragic events regarding to her friend, you see her character broken, and she's been broken, longing for her friend to, to come back. Um, and you see that sadness build in her for a long time. And Carey Mulligan delivered an excellent job portraying that just physically on her face. Um, where there are times where you see that in the frame, you you just feel it by looking at her, and that's what I really respect out of her performance. You see just by looking, um, where it actually kind of breaks your heart a bit, uh, and that's rare for an actor to do that. Just mostly, where there's scenes where you there are scenes where an actor expresses themselves and it seems kind of preachy. You could just tell by the look of her face, and that's what sold it. There's a few scenes in here that I think it stood out to me. One of my favorites. Every time she calls out on somebody's BS, she like puts them out. My favorite scene, I think, is the one where she meets Alfred Molina, where she questions if he remembers being the lawyer. I think he was the lawyer of Nina. And then he says he remembers every single bit of it, and which freaks her out a little bit because she was surprised because I guess every guy that she ran into that connected to her friend, they did not remember, but he knew, he remembered, and he goes to her and begs her forgiveness and said, "For the last 7 years since this event, I have not slept." Um, where it's a very powerful theme in the film where guilt really haunts people, and you can see the emotional stress it puts out under. That's another aspect I really loved about this film is that you see certain characters the guilt that they feel for not coming forth with the truth and not doing anything about it. You see their guilt, their regret, and they are afraid to face that fear, and they're doing anything they can to run away from it, but not Carey Mulligan. Her character's out for revenge, but you see, and when Carey Mulligan calls people out, you see the you see the expression on their faces, and you see fear, and that's what I really loved about it. You see that, and it becomes actually kind of a psychological thriller in a sense too, where it's kind of like a comedy psychological thriller, where it's kind of like a cat and mouse game, where it feels like that. And that's another thing I really respect about this film. In fact, when the film came out, I don't think hardly anybody saw it, but this film is. I appreciate that effort of this filmmaker, and I love the cinematography in this. I love how the camera sometimes would frame her in the middle, where there's like some sort of like um I wouldn't say revelation, but there's something about her character she kind of thinks about. She thinks about a certain thing, or she thinks about a certain issue, or she's trying to her perspective of trying to grasp what's right in front of her, where the camera's kind of either sets her in the middle or sets her on one part of the angle, where she's kind of fish out her situation, where she feels kind of secluded. Um, and I like that framing that the filmmaker chose to put out on this character, on this actress, for the story to work. I really loved it. Um, And then there's the ending, which I won't spoil because this movie's on HBO Max. You should check it out if you have HBO Max. I could see this film be divisive because of the ending. Um, it was one to where I didn't expect, and I actually loved how bold it was. Um, pretty bold with that ending. Um, and I don't want to go into it, and I don't want to spoil it, but or give you a hint. I can give you a hint, but let's just say it, a certain superhero film ends in a certain way. But this film's phenomenal. Don't go into this as a comedy. Go into it as a thriller. Because this is to its core, this is a thriller. I really, really, really like this film. I feel like the director of this should have directed a origin story of Harley Quinn or something along the lines of a Dark Origins Batman villain story. Because I would like to see more of this filmmaker's work, and I can't wait for whatever she comes out with. Promising Young Woman. Have you seen it? What you thought about it? Comment below. Let me know what you thought about this film, and let me know what is your favorite underrated movie.